Do you like horror?
Yeah.
Yes.
What about being scared?
No.
Yes.
If perhaps you are unbothered by the idea of the paranormal, sometimes you just need one experience to make you believe in the supernatural. For Stephen King, his moment that inspired him to write one of his most notable books of all time, The Shining, occurred on a cold October evening in 1974 when him and his wife, Tabitha, went up to Estes Park, Colorado. They stumbled upon the Stanley Hotel, and King recalled in a 1977 interview about his book that they tried to get a room for the night. When they went in and inquired about the room, they noticed that they were the only guests present in the entire hotel. The usually crowded hallways were empty, and nobody was in sight. The hotel was about to close for the winter, and the crowds were absent. They were given a key for room 217, apparently the most haunted room in the hotel, and they went about their night. Being a horror writer, King was intrigued by the fact that this could be the most scary room in the hotel. So he was obviously intrigued. Later, when King and his wife went for dinner, all the chairs were up on the tables except for their table. King recalls hearing the piano music echoing throughout the whole room, giving the whole experience an eerie feeling. King and his wife, with a slightly uneasy feeling, went up to their room and fell asleep. That night, King had one of the worst nightmares of his life. He remembers it was a dream about his son running through the corridors of the hotel, being chased by a fire hose that was trying to constrict him and strangle him to death. King woke up in a jump, and he was shaking and sweating all over. He got out of bed, lit a cigarette, went out to the balcony, and by the time the sun was up, he had the bones of his next book, The Shining, laid out in his mind. Like King, my family and I made a trip up to the Stanley Hotel about 7 years ago. We took the haunted tour, and this was very exciting for me and interesting to me because I've always been intrigued by the thought of the paranormal and scary stories. While my family was there, we didn't see any orbs or experience any strange shadows or sounds, but we heard a great number of backstories about the hotel and all the history about it. The hotel was built in 1907 by Freeland O. Stanley. Freeland O. Stanley was wealthy from the invention of the dry press photograph process and the steam-powered automobile, which he invented with his twin brother. In 1903, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis at the age of 54 and was given 3 months to live. Stanley and his wife moved to Estes Park to get the dry air, to breathe in the dry air, and to enjoy the mountainous view. Stanley eventually decided to build a house and to spend his summers up in Estes Park for the rest of his life. He ended up living to be 91 years old. In October of 1907, he began the construction of the Georgian-style hotel. He designed it himself, and with the idea to make it a summer resort, he built a casino used for dancing, not gambling, a carriage house for his cars, and several service buildings across the 150-acre land. When the building was finished in June 22, 1909, the total cost was anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000, according to ColoradoEncyclopedia.org. Locals urged Stanley to name the hotel after himself, and he finally reluctantly agreed. The hotel is in 88 guest rooms and has an all-electric kitchen. Through the 1910s, the hotel did very well, and people came to enjoy the resort. There was activities such as golfing, bowling, and concerts and dances held in the ballroom. A few years later, not enough money was being made at the hotel, so Stanley sold it to Roe Emery in 1935. He redecorated it and owned the place, and let Stanley stay, have lunch there, relax, and spend all his free time there, and attend the free events, until Stanley passed away in 1940. After the war in 1946, numerous changes, various owners who couldn't handle the place sold the building over and over again. The hotel went bankrupt many times and was sold again and again until 1995, when the Grand Heritage Hotel Group bought it. They brought it back up to its status of a first-class resort, and today, the most business they get is from embracing their association with Stephen King's novel, and they play the movie a little fact is they play the movie in every hotel room on a constant loop, 24 hours a day. They also embrace the reputation of being haunted by having tours guided that tell about different paranormal activities. I mentioned before, Freeland O. Stanley spent most of his time at the hotel, and many believe that even after his death, he never left. He can often be seen roaming the hallways or the lobby, and many times workers say they see him leaning on the wall as they're cleaning up for the night. Piano keys in the ballroom are often seen moving, which is believed to be his wife Flora, because when she was alive, she used to play the piano to entertain the guests. Aside from these two harmless apparitions, there are many ghosts that like to make their presence known. The most notable, perhaps, is Miss Elizabeth Wilson. She was a chambermaid in 1911, and in 1911, she went into room 217 to light a candle, but there was an unknown gas leak in the room. When she opened the door with her lit candle, the room instantly exploded. Unfortunately, Miss Wilson was thrown through the floor into the dining room. She survived with only 2 broken ankles. Stanley paid for all her hospital bills and paid for her children, all 3 of her children, to go all the way through college, and he promoted her to head chambermaid. Once she died, and she worked at the Stanley until she died in the 1950s. After death, it is recorded that she began to haunt room 217. Guests report that they often wake up in the morning and their clothes are out of their suitcases, folded and hung up, or that the lights flicker on and off. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, if an unwed couple has went to stay in her room, they can feel a cold presence between them, pushing them apart. A few floors up, on the 4th floor, which centuries ago was the quarters of children, nannies, and female employees. Today, the sounds of children running, footsteps, faint giggles, and the sound of kids playing can be heard through the floors. When I visited, I remember seeing the employees would put Starburst candies under the couches in that hallway to try and lure the kids out and get the ghosts to be active. Another place you can see a ghost anywhere. You can see a ghost anywhere in the hotel. You always have a chance of running into a cold presence or an apparition of a body or a face. The most common place for this to occur is the grand staircase, also called the vortex, because it is the rapid transport system for spirits. Photographs often see a figure of a body, a blurred face, and sudden coldness or a slight breeze can mean that a ghost is present. The Stanley Hotel has a very colorful history, intriguing stories attached to it, including a bone-chilling novel. The age, distant location, and all the events that happened here make this a perfect site for paranormal activity to occur, and that is exactly what seems to have happened. Whether you believe it or not, it's hard to deny the chills we get from hearing about scary and possibly true stories. And believe me, the Stanley Hotel is full of scary stories.